My husband threw tantrums for months, slammed a sauce jar so hard it cracked, flipped the coffee table, and his mom said, "Boys will be boys." So I threw bigger ones back. I married Nathan after dating for 2 years, and everything was great until we moved in together. We had this nice little duplex with a big kitchen and a backyard where I grew tomatoes and peppers. Nathan worked from home doing consulting, and I worked at the veterinary clinic downtown. We split everything down the middle and took turns cooking dinner. Life was good until about 3 months after the wedding when I saw who Nathan really was. We were at the grocery store and I grabbed the wrong brand of pasta sauce. Nathan grabbed the jar from my hand and slammed it back on the shelf so hard it cracked. The store employee just stared at us. Nathan said the sauce had too much sugar and walked off like nothing happened. I bought the sauce anyway because we needed it for dinner. When we got home, Nathan saw the jar in the bag and threw it in the trash. Then he made himself a sandwich and went to his office. After that, the tantrums started happening all the time. If I bought the wrong coffee creamer, he'd pour the whole bottle down the sink while I was watching. If I forgot to record his show, he'd unplug the TV and carry it to the garage. If dinner wasn't ready when he wanted it, he'd take every pot and pan out of the cabinet and stack them on the counter. The worst was when I came home late from an emergency surgery at the clinic. Nathan had thrown every single pillow and blanket from our bed into the bathtub and turned on the shower. He said if I couldn't be home on time, I didn't deserve a comfortable bed. I slept on the couch that night while he sprawled across our king-size mattress. My friend Lisa kept telling me to leave, but I wanted to handle this myself first. Nathan had this whole routine where he'd throw his fit, storm off to his office, then come back an hour later acting like nothing happened. He'd ask what was for dinner or if I wanted to watch a movie. If I brought up what he did, he'd say I was being sensitive and making a big deal over nothing. One time I tried to talk to him about it calmly, and he threw his coffee mug at the wall. Not near me, but close enough that I jumped. Then he said I was being dramatic about a little noise. His mom came to visit and I tried to tell her what was happening. She watched Nathan flip the coffee table because I forgot to buy his protein bars, and she said boys will be boys. She actually said that. Then she told me her husband used to break plates when he was stressed and it was my job to keep Nathan happy. That's when I realized nobody was going to fix this but me. So I started matching his energy. When Nathan threw the remote at the wall because the game was buffering, I picked up his gaming headset and launched it out the back door into the garden. He ran outside and spent an hour looking for it in the dark. When he poured out my expensive shampoo because I took too long in the shower, I took his entire shelf of supplements and protein powder and dumped them in the kitchen trash. He had to dig through coffee grounds and old food to get them back. When he knocked all my makeup off the bathroom counter because I left a hair in the sink, I went to his office and swept everything off his desk onto the floor. His laptop survived, but his coffee went everywhere. Nathan started getting confused. He'd throw his tantrum and wait for me to clean up or apologize, but instead I'd throw a bigger one. He threw a book at the door. I threw 3. He slammed cabinets. I slammed them harder. He started yelling that I was crazy and out of control. I yelled back that I was just expressing my feelings as he did. The breaking point came when Nathan's boss called him for an important video meeting. Nathan was in his office, and I was in the kitchen making lunch. I accidentally dropped a pan, and Nathan came storming out screaming about the noise. So I grabbed every pan we owned and started dropping them one by one. Nathan's face turned this deep red color that started at his neck and spread up to his hairline. His laptop screen showed his boss Winston's face frozen mid-question, and I could hear the tinny voice coming through the speakers asking what all that noise was about. Nathan slammed the laptop shut so hard I thought the screen might crack. He started walking toward me with his hands balled up into fists at his sides, and for a second I thought about backing up or apologizing or doing something to defuse the situation like I always did. But I was still holding that big cast iron skillet in my hand, and something in me just refused to move. Nathan stopped about 3 feet away from me, and we just stared at each other while he breathed really hard through his nose. I could see something different in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Something that looked almost like fear, like he suddenly realized I wasn't going to back down this time. He opened his mouth like he was going to yell at me, but nothing came out. Then he spun around and punched the hallway wall so hard his fist went straight through the drywall. The sound was this awful crunch, and then he was shaking his hand and cursing, and he walked straight to his office and slammed the door so hard the whole duplex shook. I heard the lock click from where I was standing in the kitchen. I put the pan down on the counter and my hands were shaking. All the other pans were scattered across the kitchen floor like some kind of crazy obstacle course. I started picking them up one by one and putting them back in the cabinet, and my heart was beating so fast I could feel it in my throat. Through the office door I could hear Nathan talking on his phone, and his voice had this high panicked edge to it that I'd never heard before. I walked closer to the door and pressed my ear against it. He was telling someone that I'd lost my mind, that I'd ruined his important work call on purpose, that he didn't know what to do with me anymore. I realized he was talking to his mother. He kept saying things like, "She's out of control and I can't live like this, and you need to come over here and talk to her." I stepped back from the door and went to sit on the couch in the living room. My phone was on the coffee table and I opened it up to my photos. I'd been taking pictures of everything Nathan destroyed over the past few months without really thinking about why. There was the cracked sauce jar from the grocery store, the soaked bedding in the bathtub, my makeup scattered all over the bathroom floor, the dent in the wall from where he threw his coffee mug, the broken TV remote, my shampoo bottle empty in the sink. I had dozens of photos documenting every single one of his tantrums. Less than an hour later, I heard a key turning in our front door. Nathan must have given his mother a key without asking me because Lorraine just walked right in like she owned the place. She didn't even knock. She came into the living room where I was still sitting on the couch and stood there with her hands on her hips looking at me like I was a misbehaving child. She started in on this lecture about how a wife needs to respect her husband's work time and create a peaceful home environment and be supportive instead of destructive. She said Nathan had important responsibilities and I needed to understand that my behavior was affecting his career. I just sat there listening to her go on, and then I held up my phone. I started showing her the photos one by one without saying anything. The cracked sauce jar, the soaked bedding, my makeup everywhere, the wall damage, the empty bottles. She went quiet as she looked at each photo and her face got this pinched expression like she'd bitten into something sour. When I got to the last photo, she handed my phone back to me and said we both needed to grow up. Not just Nathan. Both of us. Like I was equally responsible for this mess we were living in. Nathan's office door opened and he came out looking all disheveled with his hair sticking up. He and Lorraine went into the kitchen and started having this quiet conversation, but the duplex is small enough that I could hear most of it from the living room. Lorraine told him he needed to handle his wife, and those exact words made my stomach turn. Nathan complained that I'd changed, that I used to be sweet and easy to get along with, that now I was impossible to live with. He didn't mention any of his own behavior, or the fact that he'd been throwing tantrums for months before I started fighting back. Lorraine said something about marriage being hard work, and both people needing to compromise, but then she told Nathan that men sometimes need to be firm with their wives. I wanted to get up and throw something at both of them, but I just sat there on the couch gripping the armrest so hard my knuckles turned white. After Lorraine finally left, Nathan came and sat on the opposite end of the couch from me. We sat there in complete silence for what felt like forever. I looked at the clock on the wall and watched the minutes tick by. 1 hour passed, then another. Neither of us said a single word because what was there even to say at this point? We'd crossed into some kind of territory where normal couple communication didn't work anymore. We couldn't just talk about our feelings or work through our problems like regular people because we'd been destroying each other's stuff and yelling and throwing things for months. The silence was so heavy it felt like something physical sitting between us on the couch. Nathan kept clearing his throat like he was going to say something, but then he'd just shift his position and stay quiet. I stared at the wall where he'd punched the hole and thought about how we were going to have to fix that before the landlord saw it. I thought about how much money we'd wasted on replacing things we'd broken. I thought about how tired I was of living like this. That night, Nathan took a pillow and blanket from the closet and went to sleep in his office. I went to our bedroom and lay down on the bed, but I couldn't fall asleep. I kept staring at the ceiling thinking about everything that had happened. I'd matched Nathan's energy like I thought I was supposed to, like I was standing up for myself and refusing to be pushed around. But lying there in the dark, I realized that matching his tantrums hadn't fixed anything at all. I'd just proved that I could be as destructive as him. We were both living in a war zone that we'd created together. The duplex that used to feel like home now felt like a battlefield. My tomatoes and peppers in the backyard were probably dying because I hadn't had the energy to take care of them in weeks. Everything we'd built together was falling apart, and I didn't know how to stop it. I'd thought that fighting back would make Nathan see how awful his behavior was, but instead it just gave him an excuse to say I was crazy too. I finally fell asleep around 3 a.m, feeling more exhausted than I'd ever felt in my life. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. I walked into the kitchen and found Nathan standing by the coffee maker with this big fake smile on his face. He asked me what I wanted for breakfast in this cheerful voice that sounded completely wrong after everything that had happened yesterday. I just stood there staring at him, trying to figure out if he was serious. I told him we needed to talk about what was happening to us, about the fighting and the destruction, and his mother walking into our house uninvited. Nathan's fake smile got even bigger, and he said there was nothing to talk about if I would just stop overreacting to everything. He said we could go back to normal if I would calm down and stop making problems where there weren't any. I felt something break inside me when he said that. Not in a dramatic way, just this quiet realization that Nathan genuinely believed none of this was his fault. He thought I was the problem. He thought if I would just go back to being quiet and accepting his tantrums, everything would be fine. I didn't say anything else to him. I just went back to the bedroom and got ready for work. I drove to the veterinary clinic downtown and walked in through the back entrance like I always did. My coworker Alyssa was in the break room making coffee, and she took one look at my face and asked if everything was okay at home. I opened my mouth to give her my usual response about how everything was fine, but instead I felt my eyes fill up with tears. Alyssa put down her coffee mug and took my arm and led me into the supply room. She closed the door behind us and I just started crying. Not pretty crying either, but the kind where you can't breathe right and your nose runs everywhere. I told her everything. About the pasta sauce at the grocery store, and Nathan throwing things and pouring out my shampoo and soaking our bedding in the bathtub. I told her about how I'd started fighting back and throwing bigger tantrums than his. I told her about the pans yesterday, and Nathan punching the wall and his mother showing up uninvited. Alyssa listened to the whole thing without interrupting once. When I finally stopped talking and wiped my face with a paper towel, Alyssa was quiet for a minute. Then she said very gently that what I was describing sounded like an abusive relationship. I started to argue with her because Nathan had never actually hit me, but she held up her hand. She said abuse wasn't just physical, and that destroying property and controlling behavior and creating a scary environment all counted. She said even though I was fighting back now, that didn't make it better. She said 2 people destroying each other wasn't a relationship. It was mutual destruction. She asked me if this was really how I wanted to live for the rest of my life. I stood there in the supply room surrounded by boxes of medical supplies and bags of dog food, and I realized I didn't have an answer to that question. I spent the rest of my shift at the clinic going through the motions of my job, while my brain kept replaying what Alyssa said about mutual destruction. I checked a beagle's ears for mites and thought about Nathan punching the wall. I gave a cat her vaccines and thought about me throwing pans during his work call. I cleaned exam rooms and thought about how we'd both become people I didn't recognize anymore. When I finally drove home that evening, I sat in the driveway for 10 minutes staring at our duplex. The lights were on in the kitchen and I could see Nathan moving around inside. Part of me wanted to just keep driving and never come back. But I got out of the car and walked to the front door because running away wouldn't fix anything either. I opened the door and stopped dead in the entryway. The kitchen table was set with our nice plates and cloth napkins we only used for company. Candles were burning in the middle of the table. Takeout containers from my favorite Thai restaurant were arranged on the counter, and the smell of pad Thai and green curry filled the whole house. Nathan came out of the kitchen wearing a smile that looked completely fake after everything that had happened. He asked if I was hungry and gestured at the table like he'd done something amazing. I just stood there holding my purse and staring at this scene he'd created. It was so obvious what he was doing. His mom probably taught him this exact move when he was growing up, watching his dad break plates and then buy flowers the next day. Make a big romantic gesture and pretend the bad stuff never happened. Smooth everything over with fancy food and candles instead of actually talking about the real problems. I walked past him to the bedroom and changed out of my scrubs while Nathan stayed in the kitchen. When I came back out, he was sitting at the table waiting for me with that same fake smile plastered on his face. I sat down across from him and he immediately started dishing pad Thai onto my plate. I watched him serve the food and arrange everything just right, and I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no hope, no sadness. Just this empty feeling like I was watching a stranger perform a play I'd seen too many times before. I put my fork down before even taking a bite and told Nathan we needed couples therapy. I said our marriage was falling apart and we needed professional help to fix it. Nathan actually laughed. Not a mean laugh exactly, but this dismissive sound like I'd said something ridiculous. He said therapy was for people with real problems like addiction or affairs. He said we just needed to stop being so dramatic about everything and get back to normal. I asked him what normal meant to him, and he said it meant me not overreacting when he got frustrated and him not having to walk on eggshells in his own home. I pointed out that he'd punched a hole in our wall yesterday, and that wasn't frustration. That was violence. Nathan rolled his eyes and said I was making it sound worse than it was. He said lots of guys punch walls when they're mad and it didn't mean anything. I sat there looking at him across the candlelit table with expensive takeout getting cold between us, and I realized he genuinely believed what he was saying. He actually thought punching walls and destroying my stuff and soaking our bedding in the tub was normal behavior that I should just accept. The romantic dinner wasn't an apology. It was a bribe to get me to go back to being quiet and manageable. I stood up from the table and told Nathan I was serious about therapy. He said he wasn't going to waste money on some therapist who would just take my side anyway. I went to the bedroom and closed the door while Nathan stayed at the table eating Thai food by himself. The next morning, I woke up to Nathan's voice coming through the bedroom wall. He was in his office talking loud enough that I could hear every word. I got up and pressed my ear against the wall between our bedroom and his office. Nathan was on the phone with his boss, and his voice had this fake, cheerful tone that made my skin crawl. I heard him say something about construction next door causing noise issues yesterday. He apologized for the disruption to the video meeting and promised it wouldn't happen again. There was a long pause where Nathan wasn't talking, and I figured his boss was responding. Then Nathan's voice got higher and more stressed. He said the construction was unexpected and he'd already filed a complaint with the building management. Another pause. Nathan said he understood the client had been on the call, and he took full responsibility for not warning everyone about potential noise. His voice was getting tighter, and I could tell his boss wasn't buying the construction story. Nathan spent the next hour on damage control calls. I got dressed and ready for work while listening to him talk to different people trying to fix his professional reputation. He called someone named Winston back and spent 20 minutes explaining his home office situation and promising his work quality wouldn't suffer. He called another colleague and asked them to smooth things over with a client who'd been on the disrupted call. Every conversation made him sound more desperate, and I realized his job might actually be in trouble because of what I'd done with the pans. Part of me felt guilty, but a bigger part of me thought about all the times Nathan had made me late for work or disrupted my life with his tantrums, and he never cared about the consequences for me. I was making coffee in the kitchen when someone knocked on our front door. I opened it and found our landlord standing there looking annoyed. He said he'd gotten noise complaints from both neighbors about crashing sounds and yelling coming from our duplex. He asked if he could come in and look around. I let him in because I didn't know what else to do. The landlord walked through our living room and immediately saw the hole Nathan had punched in the hallway wall. He stopped and stared at it for a long time. Then he kept walking and noticed the cabinet door in the kitchen hanging crooked where the hinge had broken during one of our fights. He opened the cabinet and the door came completely off in his hand. The landlord set the broken cabinet door on the counter and turned to look at me. He asked very directly if he needed to be concerned about his property. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Nathan came out of his office right then, and the landlord's whole face changed. He asked Nathan what was going on with all the damage and noise complaints. Nathan immediately switched into this charming, friendly mode that made me want to throw up. He smiled at the landlord and said everything was fine. He said we'd had some minor accidents, but he was planning to repair everything himself this weekend. He put his hand on my shoulder like we were this happy couple, and I had to force myself not to pull away. The landlord looked at Nathan's hand on my shoulder and then looked at my face. He asked me directly if I felt safe in this house. I froze. Nathan's hand tightened on my shoulder. The landlord kept looking at me waiting for an answer, and I couldn't figure out what to say. If I said no, what would happen? Would the landlord call the police? Would Nathan get even angrier? If I said yes, was I lying? Did I actually feel safe here anymore? I finally said I was fine in this quiet voice that didn't sound convincing even to me. The landlord didn't look like he believed me, but he couldn't force me to say anything else. Nathan walked the landlord to the door, still being all friendly and charming. He promised again to fix everything and keep the noise down. The landlord handed Nathan a written warning about the noise complaints and property damage. He said any more problems, and he'd start eviction proceedings. Nathan took the paper and kept smiling until the landlord left. The second the door closed, Nathan's fake smile disappeared. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. He turned to me and started yelling about how I'd embarrassed him and made us look like trashy people who couldn't handle our problems. He said the landlord probably thought he was some kind of abuser now because of how I acted. I pointed out that he literally punched a wall yesterday, and the landlord could see the evidence. Nathan said that was different because I'd provoked him by dropping the pans during his meeting. He said if I hadn't started that whole thing, none of this would have happened. I told him he'd been throwing tantrums and breaking stuff for months before I ever fought back. Nathan said I was twisting everything around and making him sound like a bad guy when he was just reacting to my behavior. We stood in the hallway yelling at each other until I couldn't take it anymore and went to the guest room and slammed the door. That night, I got ready for bed in the guest room. I'd brought my pillow and some blankets in there earlier. I was just getting under the covers when I heard Nathan in the hallway. The guest room door opened and Nathan walked in. He didn't say anything, just went straight to the bed and started pulling the mattress off the frame. I asked him what he was doing and he said if I wanted to sleep separately, then I could sleep on the floor or the couch. He dragged the mattress out of the guest room and down the hall to his office. I heard him shoving furniture around to make room for it. I stood in the empty guest room looking at the bare bed frame and felt something break inside me that hadn't broken before. This wasn't anger or destruction during a fight. This was cold, calculated punishment because I'd tried to set a boundary. I grabbed my pillow and went to the living room couch. I lay there in the dark, listening to Nathan moving around in his office and thought about how we'd gotten to this point. I thought about the grocery store and the pasta sauce, and how that first tantrum should have been a warning sign. I thought about all the times I'd made excuses for him, or tried to fix things myself instead of leaving. I thought about how I'd started matching his tantrums, thinking it would make him see how awful his behavior was. But instead, it just gave him ammunition to say I was crazy too. The next day at work, my friend Ellie found me in the break room. She'd heard from Alyssa that things were bad at home. Ellie asked if I wanted to come stay at her place for a few days. She had a spare room and said I could have some space to think about what I wanted to do. I sat there with my coffee getting cold in my hands and seriously considered taking her up on it. It would be so easy to just pack a bag and leave for a while. But then I thought about Nathan staying in our duplex acting like he'd won something. I thought about how I'd be the one adjusting and accommodating again while he got to keep his space and his routine. I told Ellie thanks, but I wasn't leaving my own home. Nathan was the one with the problem, and I was tired of being the one who had to leave or change or fix things. Ellie looked worried, but she said she understood. She made me promise to call her anytime, day or night, if I needed help. I promised and went back to work, but I kept thinking about her offer all day. Part of me wondered if I was being stupid by staying. But another part of me was just so tired of running away from problems or trying to make myself smaller, so other people could be comfortable. When I got home that evening, Nathan's office door was closed and locked. I could hear him typing and talking on the phone. I made myself dinner and ate alone at the kitchen table. Nathan stayed in his office until after I went to bed on the couch. The next few days followed the same pattern. Nathan worked long hours with his door locked, and I went to work and came home and we barely saw each other. When we did pass in the hallway, we didn't speak. We were living like hostile roommates who happened to be married. I'd wake up on the couch and hear Nathan already in his office. I'd come home and he'd be in there with the door locked. We stopped cooking meals together. We stopped talking about our days. We stopped existing in the same space except for these brief, awkward moments in the hallway where we'd both look away and keep walking. I realized Nathan was avoiding me as much as I was avoiding him. Neither of us knew how to fix what we'd broken, and neither of us wanted to be the first one to try. So we just lived in this Cold War silence that felt worse than the yelling and destruction had been. I worked a late emergency surgery on a cat who'd eaten something toxic. By the time I finished, it was almost midnight. I drove home exhausted and just wanting to collapse on the couch. I unlocked the front door and walked into the dark house. I flipped on the kitchen light and noticed something different right away. There was a new lock on Nathan's office door. Not just the regular door lock, but one of those deadbolts you need a key for. I walked over and tried the handle and it didn't budge. Then I went to make myself something to eat and found another new lock on the pantry door. I stood there staring at the lock on the pantry where we kept all our food. Nathan came out of his office and I asked him what he was doing. He said since I couldn't be trusted not to disturb his work, he was protecting his space and his food. I asked him if he was seriously locking up our food, and he said it was his food since he'd bought most of it. He said I could buy my own groceries and keep them somewhere else. Then he went back in his office and locked the new deadbolt behind him. I stood in the kitchen staring at the locked pantry door for a long time after Nathan went back to his office. My stomach growled because I'd worked through lunch at the clinic and now I couldn't even get to my own food. I walked to the garage and grabbed my toolbox from the shelf. Then I went straight to Nathan's office door and unscrewed the router from the wall jack. I unplugged the modem too and wrapped all the cords around both devices. Nathan's door stayed locked while I carried everything out to my car. I popped the trunk and put the router and modem inside, then locked it and took my keys with me back into the house. About 20 minutes later, Nathan came storming out of his office yelling about the internet being down. I was sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone and I told him the internet was fine, just in a safe place. He demanded to know where it was, and I said he could have it back when he unlocked the pantry. Nathan's face went red and he started pacing back and forth in the living room. He pulled out his phone and I watched him turn on his hotspot and connect his laptop to it. He gave me this smug look like he'd won something and went back to his office. I ordered pizza on my phone since I still couldn't get to any real food. The next morning, Nathan was already in his office when I left for work. I could hear him on a video call talking to someone about quarterly projections. That evening when I got home, he was still in there, but I noticed he kept coming out to check his phone. He'd look at the screen, mutter something, then go back to his office. This happened 3 more times before dinner. Finally, around 8 o'clock, he knocked on the living room wall to get my attention. I looked up from my phone and he asked where the router was. I reminded him about the pantry lock and he said that was different because the food was his. I said the internet was mine then since I paid half the bill. He went back to his office and slammed the door. The next day I came home to find a package on the porch. Nathan must have been watching for it because he grabbed it before I even got my keys out. He took it straight to his office and I heard him ripping open the box. An hour later, I tried to connect to our Wi-Fi network and it was gone. Instead, there was a new network called Nathan's Network and it was password protected. I tried a few obvious passwords, but none of them worked. At work the next day, I was sitting in the break room watching videos on my phone during lunch. Alyssa came in to make coffee and noticed I was using my data instead of the clinic Wi-Fi. She asked why, and I told her about the separate internet networks at home. Alyssa stopped pouring her coffee and just stared at me. She set the pot down very carefully and sat across from me at the table. She said very quietly that what I was describing wasn't normal. She said I was a smart and capable person who didn't have to live like this. I told her I knew it wasn't normal, but I wasn't going to let Nathan push me around anymore. Alyssa reached across the table and put her hand on mine. She said matching his crazy didn't make me strong. It just made me participate in something that was destroying me. I pulled my hand back and said I had to get back to work. I avoided Alyssa for the rest of the day because I didn't want to hear what she was saying even though I knew she was right. Nathan started missing deadlines at work. I could hear him on stressed phone calls with his boss through his office door. One afternoon, he was in there for over an hour and I heard him saying he'd have everything done by end of day. That evening, his office door flew open and Nathan came out looking furious. He said Winston had called him in for a serious talk about his performance. He said his boss was threatening to put him on a performance improvement plan. Nathan stood in the hallway and yelled that this was all my fault for being difficult and making his home life so stressful he couldn't focus on work. I was sitting on the couch and I said nobody forced him to spend all his energy on revenge tactics instead of his actual job. Nathan grabbed his briefcase from beside the door and threw it across the room. It hit the wall right next to the hole he'd punched before and made a new dent in the drywall. The briefcase fell to the floor and papers scattered everywhere. There was a knock on the door 10 minutes later. Nathan and I both froze and looked at each other. I got up and opened it to find our landlord standing there with a clipboard. He did not look happy. He said the neighbors on both sides had reported another loud crash and he was done with warnings. He handed me a formal written notice on official letterhead. The notice said any more property damage or disturbances would result in eviction proceedings. He asked both of us to sign it to acknowledge we'd received it. Nathan came to the door and we both signed our names on the form. The landlord took it back and said he'd owned this duplex for 15 years without any problems until we moved in. He looked at both of us and said whatever we were doing to each other needed to stop or we needed to leave. Then he walked back to his car and drove away. Nathan went back to his office without saying anything. I sat on the couch and looked at the 2 holes in the wall and the scattered papers on the floor. I thought about the locked pantry and the separate internet networks, and the way we couldn't even be in the same room anymore. I grabbed my keys and went out to my car. I sat in the driveway with the engine off just staring at the duplex. An hour went by and I still couldn't make myself go back inside. The house had become this place where everything felt like a battle and I was tired all the time. I wasn't afraid Nathan would hit me because he never had. But the whole environment had turned toxic and every day felt like walking through a war zone. I pulled out my phone and just sat there holding it, not sure who to call or what to say. I ended up calling Ellie around 9 that night, still sitting in my car with the engine off. She picked up on the second ring and I could hear her TV playing in the background. I told her everything about the landlord's notice and the separate internet networks, and how Nathan and I were basically living like enemies in the same house. Ellie listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said I could come stay at her place whenever I needed to, that her couch was always available. Then she got quiet for a second before saying, maybe it was time to talk to a lawyer just to understand my options. I thanked her and hung up, then sat there staring at my phone for another 20 minutes before going inside. The next morning, I looked up divorce attorneys during my lunch break at the clinic. I told myself I was just gathering information, not actually planning to leave. I found someone named Patricia Chen who had good reviews and availability that week. I made the appointment for Thursday afternoon and didn't tell Nathan about it. When Thursday came, I left work early and drove to her office in a building downtown. The waiting room had uncomfortable chairs and magazines from 6 months ago. Patricia called me back after 10 minutes and we sat in her office with a big window overlooking the parking lot. She asked about my marriage and I gave her the basic facts about Nathan's tantrums and my retaliation. She took notes on a yellow legal pad and asked if Nathan had ever physically hurt me. I said no, he'd never hit me or anything like that. Then she asked about emotional abuse and I froze because I didn't know how to answer that question. Patricia put down her pen and explained that destroying property and controlling behavior and creating a hostile environment all counted as forms of abuse even without physical violence. She said what I was describing fit a pattern she'd seen many times before. She pulled out some pamphlets about domestic abuse and support resources, then told me to think carefully about whether I wanted to try to save this marriage or protect myself by leaving. I took the pamphlets and stuffed them in my purse, then drove home in a daze thinking about the word abuse and whether it really applied to my situation. I walked into the duplex to find a strange man working in our kitchen. He was on a ladder patching the hole Nathan had punched in the wall, and there were tools spread out on the counter. Nathan came out of his office when he heard me come in and explained that he'd hired a handyman to fix all the damage before the landlord came back. The handyman glanced between us and kept working, but I could tell he felt uncomfortable. He probably sensed the tension radiating off both of us. I went to the bedroom without saying anything to Nathan and closed the door. Later that evening, after the handyman left, Nathan found me in the kitchen making dinner. He told me in this cold, formal voice that he was fixing everything so we wouldn't get evicted, speaking to me like I was a business partner instead of his wife. I realized we hadn't had a real conversation in over a week, just these tactical exchanges about practical matters. He asked what time I'd be home tomorrow, and I told him my usual time. Then he nodded and went back to his office. I ate dinner alone at the table, looking at the freshly patched wall. At work the next day, Alyssa cornered me in the supply room and asked how things were going at home. I tried to brush her off, but she wouldn't let it go. She said I looked exhausted and stressed and she was worried about me. I finally admitted that Nathan and I were barely speaking and living like hostile roommates. Alyssa said even if Nathan wouldn't go to couples counseling, I needed to talk to someone because this situation was clearly taking a toll. She pulled up a therapist's website on her phone and showed me the profile for someone named Heidi Molina, who worked with relationship issues and trauma. I took a picture of the screen and promised Alyssa I'd think about it. I called Heidi's office that afternoon and made an appointment for the following Tuesday. The receptionist asked what I wanted to work on, and I said relationship problems, which felt like a massive understatement. When Tuesday came, I left work at 4 and drove to Heidi's office across town. She met me in the waiting room, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes. Her office had soft lighting and comfortable chairs and a box of tissues on the side table. She asked me to tell her what brought me in, and I started talking about Nathan's tantrums and my retaliation, and everything that had happened over the past months. Saying it all out loud to a stranger made me realize how completely abnormal our situation had become. Heidi asked what I wanted to get out of therapy, and I opened my mouth to say I wanted to fix my marriage, but the words wouldn't come out. I sat there staring at the tissue box and realized I didn't even know if I wanted to save my marriage anymore. Heidi didn't push me for an answer. Instead, she started asking about Nathan's behavior patterns and my responses to them. She explained that what I was describing followed a classic abuse cycle, even though Nathan wasn't hitting me. She said my retaliation was a trauma response to feeling powerless in my own home. Then she said something that hit me hard, that matching his destructiveness didn't give me power back. It just made me participate in my own harm. I left that session feeling like someone had taken everything I thought I knew about my situation and turned it upside down. I kept seeing Heidi twice a week after that first appointment. Over the next few sessions, things started getting clearer in my head. I'd been so focused on proving I wouldn't be pushed around that I'd lost sight of whether this relationship was even worth fighting for. Nathan hadn't changed at all since I started matching his tantrums. He'd just gotten sneakier about his control tactics, like locking the pantry and creating separate internet networks. I was exhausted from constantly being on guard in my own home. Heidi helped me see that I deserved better than living in a war zone, whether I stayed with Nathan or not. 3 weeks into therapy, Nathan's mother called me directly for the first time in weeks. I was sitting in my car outside the clinic after work when her name popped up on my screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me.
Back to Caldwell instead of keeping Susan's maiden name as her middle name. I don't want anything connecting me to her anymore, Ashley said. I know that sounds harsh, but I mean it. She made me into someone I hate. The Florida vacation home deposit was gone. The developer kept it as liquidated damages. David and Susan lost $75,000 in a single afternoon. Their credit cards were all maxed out, and the companies started calling for payment. Susan tried to negotiate, but they wouldn't budge. The truck got repossessed. Their fancy furniture was sold at auction to pay debts. Within 2 weeks, they'd gone from living in a $500,000 house to facing foreclosure. And through it all, Detective Rosenthal kept digging into my mother's death. She called me every few days with updates. We found 3 neighbors who remember hearing screaming that night. One of them almost called 911 but decided not to because the screaming stopped. Another neighbor saw David carrying grocery bags into the house around 6 p.m. Jennifer's car wasn't in the driveway yet, but David told police Jennifer had been home all afternoon, so he lied about the timeline. He lied about a lot of things. Detective Rosenthal paused. We also found Jennifer's best friend from 2002, a woman named Carmen Ruiz. She says Jennifer called her the morning of the day she died. Jennifer told Carmen she was planning to leave David and asked if she could stay with Carmen for a few days. Carmen said yes. They made plans for Jennifer to come over that evening with you. Jennifer never showed up because she was already dead. Because David killed her before she could leave. Can you prove it? We're building a case. The journal entries, the lies about the timeline, the neighbor testimonies, the fact that Jennifer told multiple people she was planning to leave. It's all circumstantial, but it's adding up. Detective Rosenthal's voice hardened. I've seen men walk free on less evidence than this, and I've seen men go to prison on more. It's going to come down to whether the district attorney thinks a jury will convict. When will you know? Few more weeks. Maybe a month. We're being thorough. I was staying at Margaret's house still. Reporters had found my old apartment and were camped outside. My landlord called to say I'd been evicted for breaking the no media circus clause that apparently existed in my lease. I didn't fight it. Margaret's guest room was bigger and safer, and I didn't want to go back to that studio above the laundromat anyway. But I couldn't stay with Margaret forever. So I drove out to Grandma's house one afternoon and walked through it with fresh eyes. It was too big for one person. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a kitchen that hadn't been updated since 1995. But it was paid off. It was mine. And my mother had lived here once, before she married David. I found more of her things in the attic. Boxes labeled Jennifer's belongings. Clothes that smelled like dust and old perfume. Books with her name written inside the covers. A jewelry box with cheap costume jewelry and one real piece, a silver locket. Inside was a photo of her holding me as a newborn. We were both sleeping. She looked peaceful. I took the locket and wore it. It felt like having her close. Ashley came by one day while I was cleaning out the garage. She looked different, thinner. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked more real than I'd ever seen her. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Okay." The night Mom showed us the photo of Jennifer with the bruise. "Logan and I went back to the house after you left. We wanted to get some of our things before the bank took the house. And we found something." "What?" She pulled a small notebook from her purse. "Mom's diary, from 2002. We weren't supposed to know about it, but Logan found it hidden in the back of her closet." My stomach dropped. "What's in it?" Ashley opened to a page marked with a sticky note. "It's dated the 12th of June, 2002, the day Jennifer died." She started reading. "David called me at work today, frantic. He said Jennifer fell down the stairs and died. He said it was an accident. He was crying on the phone, but when I got to the house, he wasn't crying anymore. He was calm, too calm. He told me we needed to get our story straight. He said if people knew Jennifer was planning to leave him, it would look bad. He said we needed to tell everyone that things were fine between them. I asked him what really happened, and he just looked at me and said, she was going to take my son away from me. I couldn't let that happen. Then he told me to go home and act normal. He said if I told anyone what he'd said, he'd make sure I never saw Logan again. He was 3 years old then. I believed David would do it. So I kept quiet." The notebook shook in Ashley's hands. She kept quiet for 23 years. She knew what he did, and she said nothing. She helped him cover it up. She made you think you were adopted so you'd never question the story. She turned you into the outsider so no one would listen if you ever figured out the truth. "Where is this notebook now?" Ashley handed it to me. "Give it to the police. Give them everything. Let them see what kind of people our parents really are. This implicates Susan too. She could go to prison." "Good," Ashley said flatly. "She deserves it." I called Detective Rosenthal. She came to the house within an hour and took the notebook as evidence. She read the entry Ashley had marked, and her expression went cold and hard. "This is a confession," she said. "Susan Caldwell admitted David killed Jennifer and she helped cover it up. That makes her an accessory after the fact at minimum. Possibly conspiracy. What happens now?" "Now I arrest both of them." It happened fast after that. Police showed up at the foreclosed house where David and Susan were still living, squatting essentially since the bank hadn't physically removed them yet. David was arrested for second-degree murder. Susan was arrested for accessory after the fact and obstruction of justice. Both were denied bail. The district attorney held a press conference announcing the arrests and the reopening of Jennifer Caldwell's death investigation. I watched it on Margaret's TV with Ashley sitting beside me. Logan had refused to come. He was still processing everything and didn't want to watch his parents get destroyed on live television. "This is justice for Jennifer," the DA said, standing at a podium with Detective Rosenthal beside her. For 23 years, her death was written off as a tragic accident. But new evidence shows that Jennifer was the victim of domestic violence and that her husband, David Caldwell, murdered her to prevent her from leaving him and taking their son. His wife, Susan Caldwell, knew about the murder and helped him cover it up. Both will face the full extent of the law. Reporters shouted questions. "Is the son involved? Did he know about the murder?" The DA shut that down fast. Austin Caldwell was 2 years old when his mother was killed. He is a victim in this case, not a suspect. He recently learned the truth about his mother's death through documentation left by his grandmother, who suspected foul play for years but lacked proof until recently. More questions. What about the will? The inheritance? The DA looked irritated. This case is about murder, not money. But yes, Eleanor Caldwell left her estate to her grandson Austin after discovering that her son and daughter-in-law had been abusing him for years and lying about his parentage. That information came to light during the investigation and provided additional motive for the defendant's behavior. Ashley turned off the TV. "It's really over." "No," I said. "It's just starting. Now comes the trial." The trial didn't start for another 8 months. Pre-trial motions, discovery, jury selection. I spent that time trying to build a life that felt normal. I quit my job at the auto parts store and enrolled in community college to finish my degree. I started seeing a therapist twice a week to process everything that had happened. Margaret helped me set up the inheritance properly, investments and accounts, and a budget that would let me live comfortably without blowing through everything like my parents had. I stayed in Grandma's house. I renovated the kitchen and updated the bathrooms and turned one of the bedrooms into an office. I planted new flowers in the garden and fixed the porch railing and painted the shutters. I made it mine. Ashley visited often. Logan came by once, awkward and guilty, and we talked for hours about what it was like growing up in that house with those parents. He cried a lot. He apologized for every time he'd gone along with their cruelty. I told him I forgave him. I wasn't sure I meant it yet, but I wanted to. Maybe someday I would. The trial started in March. I sat in the courtroom every single day. Margaret sat beside me. Ashley came when she could get time off work. Logan never showed up. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. They presented Jennifer's journal entries, the neighbor testimonies, the timeline discrepancies. The forensic evidence showing Jennifer's injuries were inconsistent with a simple fall. Carmen Ruiz testified about the phone call from Jennifer that morning, about the plans they'd made. The original coroner testified about the old bruises he'd found on Jennifer's body. Susan's diary was entered as evidence, and the entry was read aloud in court. David sat at the defense table looking older than his 54 years. Gray, thin. His lawyer argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that the journal entries proved Jennifer was clumsy and accident-prone, that the timeline discrepancies were the result of trauma and poor memory, that Susan's diary entry was taken out of context. But then the prosecution called Susan to the stand. She'd taken a plea deal, testify against David, and she'd get 7 years instead of 20. She took the deal. She sat in the witness box in an orange jumpsuit and told the truth. David called me the afternoon Jennifer died. He told me Jennifer was leaving him and taking Austin. He said he couldn't let that happen. He said he'd pushed her down the stairs during an argument. He said it was an accident, but he pushed her. He admitted it to me. Then he asked me to help him make it look like she'd fallen. He told me to back up his story that everything was fine in their marriage. He said if I didn't help him, he'd tell police I was involved too. I was scared, so I helped him lie. David's lawyer tried to break her testimony on cross-examination, but Susan held firm. She'd made her choice. She was going to save herself by burying him. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, the forewoman stood and read the verdict. Guilty of second-degree murder. Guilty of child endangerment for leaving a toddler in the house with his mother's body for an hour before calling 911. Guilty of evidence tampering. David showed no emotion. He just stared at the table in front of him while the judge set a sentencing date. 6 weeks later, he was sentenced to 35 years to life. Susan got 7 years as per her plea agreement. Both would be eligible for parole eventually, but the odds of them getting out early were slim. I didn't feel victorious when it was over. I felt empty, tired, like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that now that it was gone, I didn't know what to do with my arms. Ashley hugged me outside the courthouse. "It's over," she said again. This time I believed her. I went back to Grandma's house and sat in the garden with the locket around my neck. "Mom," I said out loud, "they can't hurt anyone else now. You can rest." The wind picked up, rustling through the trees. Somewhere a bird was singing. The sun was warm on my face, and for the first time in 23 years, I felt like I could breathe. Margaret helped me set up a foundation in my mother's name, the Jennifer Caldwell Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors. We funded shelters and legal aid and counseling services. We helped women leave dangerous situations. We made sure they had the resources Jennifer never had. Ashley became the foundation's first employee. She coordinated with the shelters and managed the grant applications. She threw herself into the work like she was trying to make up for all the years she'd stayed silent. Maybe she was. Logan spiraled. He moved to another state and cut off contact with everyone. Last I heard, he was working construction and drinking too much. Ashley worried about him, but he wouldn't take her calls. Some damage is too deep to fix quickly. I finished my degree, business management. I got a job at a nonprofit doing financial planning and discovered I was good at it. Good at helping people manage their money. Good at teaching them how to budget and save and build a life that didn't depend on anyone else. I started dating someone I met at school. Her name was Riley Chen, and she was studying social work, and she didn't know anything about my past until I told her. She listened to the whole story without interrupting, and when I was done, she said, "Your mom would be proud of who you became." I cried. I hadn't cried through the entire trial, but I cried then, sitting in a coffee shop with this girl I barely knew, because she'd said exactly what I needed to hear. 2 years later, I proposed to Riley in Grandma's garden. She said yes. We got married in the same garden with Margaret officiating and Ashley as the maid of honor. Logan didn't come, but he sent a card with a short message. "I'm happy for you. I'm sorry I can't be there. I'm working on being better. Love, Logan." It was enough. Riley moved into the house with me and we made it ours together. We painted the walls and updated the landscaping and turned the office into a nursery when Riley got pregnant. Our daughter was born on a Tuesday morning in October. We named her Eleanor Jennifer Caldwell, Ellie for short. I held her in the hospital and looked at her tiny face and made a promise. You will always know you're loved. You will always know you're wanted. You will never doubt that you belong. Riley smiled at me from the bed, exhausted and happy. "She's perfect." Yeah, I agreed. She is. Margaret came to visit the next day. She was 70 now, officially retired, but still sharp as ever. She held Ellie and cried, "Your grandmother would have loved her." "I think she does," I said. 3 years after that, David had his first parole hearing. It was denied. 5 years after that, he had another one, also denied. Susan got out after serving her full 7 years. She moved to another state, and I never heard from her again. Ashley said Susan tried to contact her once, but Ashley didn't respond. Some bridges you burn completely. I saw David once after the trial. I'd gone to the prison to give a victim impact statement for his parole hearing. He looked old, broken, nothing like the man who'd terrorized my mother and made my childhood hell. He asked to speak to me before I left. The guard let us talk through the glass partition with phones. "I'm sorry," David said. His voice was hoarse. "I know that doesn't mean anything, but I'm sorry for what I did to your mother. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was angry and bitter, and I took it out on people who didn't deserve it." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you hate me so much?" "Because you looked like her," he said simply. "Every time I saw you, I saw Jennifer. I saw her eyes and her smile, and I remembered what I'd done. So I tried to make you disappear. I tried to erase you, but you wouldn't disappear. You kept existing, kept surviving, and it drove me crazy. I'm glad I survived," I said. "Me too," David said quietly. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you got the inheritance. I'm glad you got the truth. And I'm glad you're living the life Jennifer wanted for you." I hung up the phone and walked out. I never went back. Ellie is 7 now. She's smart and funny and kind. She loves dinosaurs and soccer and reading. Riley and I had another baby 2 years ago, a boy we named James after Riley's grandfather. They play together in the same garden where I proposed, where I scattered some of Grandma's ashes, where I sometimes sit and think about my mother and everything she lost. Ashley is married now too. She met a man named Marcus, who works as a teacher and treats her like she's precious. They have a daughter named Sophie, who's best friends with Ellie. The cousins play together at family dinners that happen at my house every Sunday. Real family dinners, the kind I never had growing up. Logan came back eventually. He got sober and moved to a town an hour away and reached out tentatively. Ashley met with him first. Then me. He's different now. Quieter. More thoughtful. He works as a counselor at a rehab facility and sponsors other men trying to get clean. He comes to Sunday dinners sometimes. It's still awkward, but we're trying. The foundation has helped over 3,000 women leave abusive situations. We've expanded to 4 states. Ashley runs it full-time now, and she's brilliant at it. She speaks at conferences and trains shelter staff and fights for better laws. She's become the person she wishes she'd been when we were kids. I'm 30 now. I have a family, a career, a life that feels real and solid and mine. I don't think about David and Susan much anymore. They're footnotes in my story, not the main characters. But I think about my mother every day. I think about her strength in documenting the abuse, her courage in planning to leave, the choice she made to protect me even when it cost her everything. I think about how she never got to see me grow up, but how everything I am is because of her. Sometimes Ellie asks about her grandmother, Jennifer. We've told her age-appropriate versions of the story. That Grandma Jennifer died when Daddy was little, that she loved Daddy very much, that she was brave and kind. One day, when Ellie's older, I'll tell her the whole truth. I'll show her the journal entries and the photos and explain what happened. I'll make sure she understands that her grandmother was a survivor who fought back the only way she could, that she documented the truth so that someday, somehow, justice would be possible. But for now, Ellie just knows that we light a candle for Grandma Jennifer on her birthday every year, that we visit her grave and leave flowers, that her picture hangs in our living room next to Grandma Eleanor's. Riley comes up behind me while I'm standing at the stove making dinner. She wraps her arms around my waist and rests her chin on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "Just how different everything is," I say. "How different it could have been. But this is how it is," Riley says. "You made it this way. You and Ashley and your mom and your grandma, all of you fighting for something better." I turn around and kiss her. "You're right." Ellie runs in, demanding to know when dinner will be ready. James toddles behind her, barely keeping up. The kitchen is warm and full of noise and life. This is my family. The one I chose. The one I built from nothing. And somewhere, I think my mother is proud. The inheritance gave me money and security. The trial gave me justice. But the years since then gave me something more important. They gave me peace. They gave me the understanding that I'm not defined by the people who hurt me, that I can be more than my trauma, that I can build something good from something terrible. I'm not the adopted kid who wasn't good enough anymore. I'm not the outsider who didn't belong. I'm Austin Caldwell. I'm a husband and a father and a son who finally knows his whole story. The good and the bad. The beautiful and the broken. And I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Update 1. The trial aftermath. The anniversary of David's sentencing passed quietly. I didn't mark it on the calendar, but I knew what day it was when I woke up. Riley noticed me staring at my coffee longer than usual. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking." She knew better than to push. That's one of the things I love about her. She understands that some thoughts need space. Work kept me busy. The foundation was expanding into 2 more states, and Ashley needed my help with the financial planning. We were on a video call going over budgets when her assistant interrupted. "I'm sorry, but there's someone here insisting on seeing you. She says she's your mother." Ashley's face went pale on the screen. "Tell her I'm not available. She says it's urgent. She says it's about Logan." My stomach dropped. Put her on speaker. A moment later, Susan's voice filled the room. Ashley, please. I know you don't want to see me, but Logan is in the hospital. He tried to kill himself 3 days ago. They don't think he's going to make it. The video call ended. Ashley was already grabbing her keys. I told her I'd meet her there. The hospital was 2 hours away in the town where Logan had been living. Ashley and I arrived within minutes of each other. Susan was in the waiting room looking nothing like the woman I remembered. She'd aged 20 years in the 7 she'd been in prison. Her hair was gray and stringy. Her clothes looked secondhand. She stood when she saw us. Don't, Ashley said. Don't say anything. Just tell us which room. ICU, 3rd floor, room 307. Susan's voice cracked. They said family only and I'm still his mother, so they let me in, but he won't wake up. He won't. We walked past her to the elevators. I didn't look back. Logan was on a ventilator. His face was bruised and swollen. His arms were wrapped in bandages. The nurse who met us was kind but direct. He took pills and alcohol. His roommate found him and called 911, but it had been a while. They did what they could, but there's significant liver damage. Brain activity is minimal. Ashley sank into the chair beside his bed. She took his hand carefully, avoiding the IV lines. Logan, it's Ashley. I'm here. Austin's here too. You have to wake up. Please wake up. But he didn't wake up. Not that day. Not the next. On the 3rd day, his doctor sat us down and explained that Logan was brain dead. The machines were keeping his body alive, but he was already gone. Ashley sobbed. Austin, what do we do? We let him go, I said quietly. We let him rest. Susan appeared in the doorway. She'd been hovering in the waiting room for days. Let me say goodbye first, please. Ashley looked at me. I nodded. We stepped outside while Susan went in. Through the window, I watched her collapse beside Logan's bed, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Whatever she said to him, we couldn't hear it. After 10 minutes, she came out. Her eyes were red and swollen. I did this to him. I destroyed my own son. You destroyed a lot of things, I said. She looked at me like she wanted to argue. Then she just nodded and walked away. We withdrew life support that evening. Ashley and I stayed with Logan until the end. It didn't take long. 1 minute the machines were beeping and his chest was rising and falling. The next minute everything was quiet. Ashley cried herself sick. I held her and stared at my brother, the one I'd barely known, and felt nothing but waste. What a waste of a life. What a waste of potential. Logan could have been anything. Instead, he'd been crushed under the weight of who our parents were. The funeral was small. Me, Ashley, Riley, Marcus, Margaret. Susan came but stayed in the back. She didn't approach us. She didn't try to speak. She just stood there looking hollowed out and old. We buried Logan next to Grandma Eleanor. Ashley wanted him close to someone good, someone who would have loved him if she'd had the chance. After the funeral, I found Susan sitting on a bench near the parking lot. I sat down beside her without saying anything. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke. I know you hate me. I don't hate you. I don't feel anything about you at all. That's worse, she said. Probably. She wiped her eyes. I was jealous of Jennifer. Did you know that? She was beautiful and kind, and everyone loved her. When David married me 6 months after she died, people whispered about it. They said it was too soon. They said I was a rebound. And they were right. David never loved me the way he loved her. He was always comparing me to her, always finding me lacking. So when you came along, looking just like her, I hated you for it. I hated that you were proof of David's real love, proof that I was second choice. That's not my fault, I said. I know. Susan's voice was barely a whisper. I know it wasn't your fault, but I punished you anyway. I made you into the enemy so I didn't have to face what I really was. A woman who married a murderer and helped him hide it. A woman who destroyed her own stepson to protect a lie. A woman who's lost everything because she couldn't stand to lose anything. Logan didn't deserve what you did to him. No, she agreed. He didn't. Neither did Ashley. Neither did you. I destroyed my whole family because I was weak and scared and jealous, and now I have to live with that. Good, I said, standing up. You should live with it. You should carry it every day for the rest of your life. Maybe that's your punishment, not prison. Just knowing what you did and who you really are. I walked away and left her on that bench. I never saw her again. Ashley spiraled after Logan's death. She blamed herself for not reaching out more, for not trying harder to help him. I reminded her that Logan was an adult who made his own choices. That we can't save people who don't want to be saved. But grief doesn't listen to logic. She threw herself deeper into the foundation work. 16-hour days, weekends, late nights. Marcus worried. I worried. Finally, Riley sat her down and talked to her like the social worker she was. You're running from the grief. You're trying to work yourself to death to avoid feeling the pain. But it doesn't work that way. The pain doesn't go away. You just get exhausted and the pain is still there. Ashley broke down. I don't know how to live with this. I don't know how to accept that Logan's gone and it's because of what our parents did to us, to all of us. Riley held her while she cried. Then she set Ashley up with a therapist, the same one I'd been seeing for years, a woman named Dr. Patricia Hammond who specialized in family trauma. Ashley started going twice a week. Slowly, she started to stabilize. She cut her work hours back to something reasonable. She and Marcus started trying to have a baby. She planted a tree in her backyard in Logan's memory, and she talked to it sometimes when she was sad. Life moved forward the way it always does. Whether you're ready or not, whether you want it to or not. 6 months after Logan died, I got a call from Detective Rosenthal. She'd retired from the police force but kept in touch occasionally. "Austin, I need to tell you something." David filed an appeal. My blood went cold. On what grounds? Ineffective counsel. He's claiming his lawyer didn't defend him properly, and he deserves a new trial. Will it work? Probably not. But it means the case will be reviewed. It means you might have to testify again. I wanted to give you a heads up. I told Riley that night. She was furious. He's already in prison. What more does he want? He wants out. He wants another chance to lie his way free. His real home is wherever I say it is until he's 18, Lisa said. And right now, that's your house. You're being cruel. I'm being a parent. David's face twisted. You've changed. Ever since you married him, he pointed at me. You were never like this before. Always supportive. Always understanding. Now you're cold. Hard. This isn't you. Maybe it should have been, Lisa said. Maybe if I'd been harder earlier, Dylan wouldn't be in a hospital bed. Maybe if I'd held him accountable instead of making excuses, he'd have learned consequences before things got this bad. Or maybe if you'd chosen your kids over your new husband, they wouldn't be falling apart. The police car pulled up. Same officer as before. He recognized David immediately. Mr. Brenner, we talked about this yesterday. I'm trying to talk to my ex-wife about our son who's in the hospital, and she's asked you to leave her property, so you need to go. Now. Or I'll arrest you for trespassing. David looked between the three of us, his face red, hands clenched into fists. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is, the officer replied. Leave. Now. David got in his truck and drove away. The officer took our statement, gave us a case number, told us to call immediately if David came back again. He's escalating, the officer said. That's concerning. You might want to consider a restraining order. We went inside and locked the new locks behind us. Lisa sat on the couch and put her face in her hands. I need this to stop, she said. I need all of it to just stop. My phone rang. Patricia, our lawyer. David just filed for emergency custody, she said, claiming Lisa abandoned the children and they're in danger in her care. We have a hearing Friday morning. Dylan's in the hospital, I said. How is that Lisa's fault? It's not. But David's arguing that Lisa's actions caused Dylan's mental health crisis. He's also claiming she's being unduly influenced by you, trying to paint you as the villain. Can he win? Not with the evidence we have, but we need to be prepared. I'll file our response tomorrow. Make sure you're both at the courthouse Friday at 9. We'll be there. I hung up and told Lisa. She just nodded, too exhausted to even be surprised. How did it come to this? She asked. How did we go from normal family problems to lawyers and court dates and hospital visits in less than a week? Because you finally said enough, I replied. And people who've never faced consequences don't know how to handle them. The next 3 days were a blur. Dylan was released from the hospital with a referral for outpatient therapy. David picked him up. Sophia sent Lisa daily texts begging to come home. David sent lawyer letters threatening everything from custody modification to suing me for alienation of affection. Patricia kept filing responses, kept building our case, kept telling us to stay calm and let the evidence speak. Friday morning arrived. We dressed like we were going to a funeral, Lisa in a conservative dress, me in my only suit. We met Patricia at the courthouse at 8:30. Remember, she said, don't react, don't get emotional. Answer questions honestly and briefly. Let me do the talking. The hearing was in family court, small courtroom, Judge Anderson presiding. Middle-aged woman with tired eyes who'd probably seen every family drama imaginable. David showed up with his own lawyer. Candace was with him. Dylan and Sophia were not, probably not allowed since they were minors. David's lawyer went first, painted Lisa as an unfit mother who'd chosen her new husband over her children, claimed Dylan's suicide attempt was direct result of Lisa's abandonment, brought up every little thing. Times Lisa had worked late, times she'd missed school events, times she'd been tired or distracted, made her sound like a monster. Then it was Patricia's turn. She stood slowly, placed the investigator's report in front of the judge, started walking through everything. The parties, the theft, the fraud, the credit cards, the gambling, the lies. Mrs. Brenner didn't abandon her children, Patricia said. She removed them from a situation where they were engaging in criminal activity and placed them with their father as per their custody agreement. She's not denying access. She's requiring accountability. The judge looked through the documents. Her expression didn't change. She asked Lisa a few questions, asked me a few questions, asked David why he hadn't noticed his son opening fraudulent credit cards. David didn't have a good answer. Mr. Brenner, the judge said finally, Your son committed multiple counts of fraud and theft. Your daughter was truant from school and involved with an adult man. These are serious issues that require serious intervention. Mrs. Brenner responded appropriately by removing them from a home where they had access to commit more crimes and placing them in your care. That's not abandonment. That's good parenting. David's lawyer tried to argue. The judge held up her hand. As for Dylan's hospitalization, I've reviewed the medical records. The attending psychiatrist noted the attempt appeared to be a gesture rather than a genuine effort. Dylan received appropriate care and was released with no recommendation that he return to his mother's home. In fact, the psychiatrist recommended continued separation while Dylan works through his behavioral issues in therapy. She closed the folder, looked at David with an expression that could freeze lava. Your emergency motion is denied. The current custody arrangement stands. Dylan and Sophia will remain in your primary care until such time as Mrs. Brenner determines they're ready to return, or until they turn 18. You're responsible for ensuring they attend school, follow through with therapy, and don't engage in further criminal activity. If you find that too difficult, perhaps you'll gain some appreciation for what Mrs. Brenner has been dealing with. She banged her gavel. We're done here. David's face went purple. He started to say something, but his lawyer grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the door. Candace followed, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. Lisa and I sat there stunned. Patricia packed up her briefcase with a small smile. That went well, she said. We left the courthouse in a daze. Got to the car. Lisa started laughing. Not happy laughter. The slightly hysterical kind that comes when you've been holding everything in for too long. We won, she said. We actually won. You won, I corrected. You stood up for yourself and the judge saw it. I thought for sure she'd say I was terrible, that I had to take them back. The law is on your side. You did nothing wrong. We went home. Lisa changed out of her dress into sweats and laid on the couch. I made her tea and sat with her while she processed everything. What happens now? She asked. Now David has to actually parent his kids, and Dylan and Sophia have to live with consequences. Do you think they'll learn? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But that's not your responsibility anymore. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sophia. Lisa showed it to me. Mom, Dad says we have to stay with him forever. Is that true? I want to come home. Lisa typed slowly. It's not forever, but it's for now. You need to work on yourself. Be honest. Make better choices. When you're ready, we'll talk about you coming back. But that could be months, maybe longer. I love you. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response. That was hard, Lisa said. Being a parent is hard. I thought the hard part was potty training and teaching them to read. Turns out the hard part is letting them fail and not rushing in to fix it. 2 weeks passed. Dylan and Sophia stayed with David. We heard through other people that it wasn't going well. David's apartment was small. 2 bedrooms for 4 people. Candace had moved out after a week, saying she couldn't handle the tension. Dylan was going to therapy but apparently not talking. Sophia was back in school but struggling. David called Lisa once, asked if she could take them for a weekend, give him a break. Lisa said no. You wanted full custody, she told him. You got it. Figure it out. He hung up on her. My phone buzzed one evening. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Tom, it was Dylan. Can I talk to you? I'm listening. I want to apologize. For real this time. Not because I want something, just because I was wrong. About everything. The way I treated you. The stealing. The parties. All of it. I waited, listening to him breathe on the other end. Living with Dad is awful, he continued. He doesn't care about anything. Just wants us to be quiet and stay out of his way. Candace left because of us. He blames us for everything. And I realized that you never did that. You actually tried. I just treated you like crap because I could. Why are you telling me this? Because I want to understand something. Why did you try so hard? You weren't my dad. You didn't have to do anything. But you paid for stuff and showed up and acted like you cared. Why? I thought about that. About my own father leaving. About growing up without that presence. About wanting to be different. Because I knew what it felt like to not have someone, I said. And I didn't want you to feel that way. But we made you feel that way instead. Yeah, you did. I'm sorry, he said. And this time it sounded real. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I am. What are you going to do about it? What do you mean? Sorry is just a word, Dylan. What are you going to do differently? He was quiet for a long time. I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out in therapy. The therapist says I have a lot of issues with anger and control. Says I push people away before they can leave me. Apparently that's because of my parents' divorce. That might explain your behavior. It doesn't excuse it. I know. She says that too. Says I'm responsible for my choices even if I have reasons for making them. She's right. Tom? His voice got small. Do you think Mom will ever let us come home? That depends on you. On real change, not promises. Not temporary good behavior. Actual sustained effort over months. How do I do that? You show up. You do the work. You're honest. You respect boundaries. You prove through actions that you're different. And maybe eventually, You earn trust back. But there's no guarantee. Even if I do everything right, even then, some things can't be fixed. He was quiet again. Okay, thanks for being honest. Dylan, yeah? I hope you figure it out. I really do. Because underneath all the crap behavior, I think there's a decent kid in there somewhere. I'll try, he said. That's all I can do. Right? Try. That's all any of us can do. He hung up. I sat there holding my phone and wondering if that conversation meant anything or if it was just another manipulation. Time would tell. Lisa came home from work an hour later. I told her about the call. She listened without interrupting. Do you believe him? She asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me thinks it's another game. Me too. She kicked off her shoes. I got a call from the credit card companies today. They're pressing charges. Dylan's going to have to go to court. How do you feel about that? Relieved? Is that terrible? I feel relieved that someone else is holding him accountable so I don't have to be the bad guy. That's not terrible, that's human. A month passed. Then 2. Dylan went to court, got probation and community service and had to pay restitution. The credit card debt was erased since he was a minor, and it was fraudulent, but he owed Lisa and me directly. Judge ordered him to get a job and make payments. He got hired at a fast food place. Started paying us back $20 a week. It would take years to cover the full amount, but it was something. Sophia asked to come home for Christmas. Lisa said no. We spent Christmas just the two of us. Quiet, peaceful, sad in a way, but also freeing. David sent a bitter text about how we'd destroyed his holiday by refusing to take the kids even for a day. Lisa blocked his number. Spring came. Dylan was still working, still going to therapy, still living with David. Sophia had brought her grades up, was talking about college. Both of them sent occasional texts. Always respectful now, always careful. Lisa responded sometimes. Short messages, keeping distance but not completely cutting them off. I think they're actually changing, she said one evening. Not just pretending. Maybe. You still don't believe them? I think people can change. I'm just not sure these particular people will. 3 months later, Dylan called Lisa, asked if he could come by to talk, in person. Lisa looked at me for permission, which was weird because this was her son and her house, but I understood why she did it. It's okay, I said. I'll be here. Dylan showed up Saturday afternoon. He'd gotten taller, filled out a little, looked older somehow. He stood on the porch with new locks he couldn't open and waited for Lisa to let him in. She did. He walked into the house like it was a stranger's place, looked around at everything, the replaced lamp, the cleaned couch, the space that used to be his home. Thank you for seeing me, he said. Lisa nodded, gestured to the couch. He sat. We sat across from him in chairs, waiting. I've been in therapy for 4 months now, Dylan started. Learning a lot about myself, about why I did the things I did, about how much I hurt people, especially you guys. He looked at me. Tom, I treated you like garbage, made your life miserable when you were just trying to help. I stole from you, disrespected you, made it clear I didn't think you mattered, and I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not because I want something, just because it's true. I didn't say anything, just listened. I've paid back $320 so far, he continued. I know that doesn't cover what I took, but I'm still working, still making payments. My therapist says it'll take me about 3 years to pay everything back at this rate. I'm okay with that. Why? Lisa asked. Why am I okay with it? Why are you doing this? The therapy, the job, the payments. Why now? Dylan leaned back. Because living with Dad showed me what the alternative looks like. He doesn't care about me. Not really. Candace left because she couldn't handle us. Dad just wants us gone. He counts down the days until I turn 18 and he can kick me out. Every day, he makes it clear we're a burden. And I realized that's what I did to you guys. Treated you like a burden. Made you miserable. And you still tried. Dad doesn't try. That's the difference. So this is about Dad being worse than us? I asked. No. It's about me realizing that you guys actually loved me even when I didn't deserve it. And I threw that away because I was angry about the divorce and scared of being replaced and just generally being a selfish asshole. Lisa made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. I can't undo what I did, Dylan said. I know that, but I want to do better, be better. I'm not asking to move back in. I know I'm not ready for that, but I wanted you to know I'm trying, and I'm going to keep trying. He stood up. That's all I came to say. Thanks for listening. Lisa walked him to the door. He turned back before leaving. Mom, I love you. I know I didn't show it, but I do. I love you too, Lisa said. I never stopped. He left. Lisa closed the door and leaned against it, crying. I held her. Do you think he meant it? She asked. I think he's figuring out who he wants to be. Whether he sticks with it long enough to actually change? That's the question. 6 more months passed. Dylan kept working, kept therapy, kept paying us back. Never asked to move home, just sent updates. Grades from the online classes he was taking to graduate on time. Photos of his Employee of the Month award. Small things that showed effort. Sophia asked to come home for her 16th birthday. Lisa said maybe, asked what Sophia had learned. What had changed? Sophia sent a 3-page letter, handwritten, about how she'd been following the wrong people, making bad choices because she thought it made her cool, how she'd hurt people, how she was sorry. Lisa read it 5 times, then called Sophia and told her she could come home for a trial period. 1 month, summer break, we'd see how it went. Sophia cried on the phone, thanked Lisa over and over, promised she'd be different. She moved back in June, nervous, walking on eggshells, following every rule, doing chores without being asked, spending time with Lisa, trying to rebuild. It was awkward, tense, but not terrible. Dylan called every week, never asked to come home, just talked about work, about therapy, about his plans for after high school. Lisa gradually relaxed into the conversations, started offering advice, started sounding like his mom again instead of a stranger. 1 year after the party, 1 year after everything fell apart, Lisa and I were having dinner when her phone rang. Dylan, Mom, I need to ask you something. What's up? I got accepted to community college for fall. I want to study computer science, but I need help with financial aid forms. Could you help me fill them out? Lisa looked at me. I nodded. Of course, she said. Come over this weekend. We'll work on it together. Dylan showed up Saturday morning. Sophia was there. They hugged, awkward at first, then real. We all sat around the kitchen table, filling out FAFSA forms, talking about classes and schedules and possibilities. It felt almost normal. When Dylan was leaving, he stopped at the door, looked at me. Tom, I still owe you $1,280. I'm going to keep paying, but I wanted you to know I'm grateful you didn't give up on Mom when everything went sideways. She deserves someone who has her back. You do that. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. He left. Lisa came and stood next to me. We watched him drive away in the car David had bought him, third hand and barely running. Think we'll be okay? She asked. I think we already are. Sophia graduated high school the next year. Dylan finished his associate's degree, both of them working, both paying their own way, both respectful, both changed in ways that seemed real. They'd never live with us again. That chapter was closed, but they were back in our lives, carefully, with boundaries, with mutual respect.